to say, okay, this has happened enough, right? Who's the common denominator, or what's the common denominator? Sometimes it can be an environment, especially when we're talking about trauma. Sometimes that's going to come back and say, oh, okay, well, I'm the common denominator. I might have to do something to sift here.
I held the weight of the world in my hands, but I let it go. Now I understand. I'm awake, I'm aware, I'm alive. I'm living my best recovered life.
You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
And welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. I am so happy to have therapist and trauma specialist back on the show again, Sean Osterdorf. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Love the intro. Is that new?
It is a new. We have a new intro. We have a new intro. We also have a new intro coming for the lives too, which is good. So welcome back. I haven't seen you for a little bit, so it's good to have you back on the show.
I appreciate you having me.
Excited to talk with you. You know, it's Trauma Awareness Month in June, so we're doing a bunch of content on trauma because so many people that live in the world of addiction recovery that are recovering, thinking about being recovering, identify that they have had trauma or might have trauma, or it shocks them after they've been maybe sober for a year or so. Oh my gosh, maybe something else is going on. And could this be trauma? So I'm glad to have you on so we can kind of unpack this a little bit. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of pain attached to trauma. So I wanted to kind of dive in with you as you being a specialist in working with people that have trauma. What is it? How do you know if you have it? And,
Sure.
you know, kind of dive a little deeper here into what do you do about it, especially if you're in addiction recovery?
Sure. Great question. And it can be loaded. Trying to figure out, why does this exist? Where does this come from? And oftentimes there can be, misconceptions, right? As far as what does this feel like? We have something in the field called big T and little T traumas, and something that I'm not always so keen to I'll talk about, because trauma can come in all sorts of forms. It's typically something that has happened that was very, very difficult. Oftentimes it's something that has hurt us and control has been taken from us. Right. It could be something as if, I saw a car crash. It could be something more personal as far as, having a physical assault, sexual assault, and being hurt in those ways. And oftentimes it's so hard to make sense of that we will go external, to try to offer ourselves something that I actually call kind of controlled dissociation, substance use, right? Addiction, to try to allow ourselves to maybe regulate whatever it is that certainly is coming up within us, and the trauma responses. We've heard that term, often. It's things that can impact our emotions, impact our thoughts along its path.
You know, I noticed years ago, this started to come up. I started to notice something just as a human being in recovery in 12-step groups, that I started to see a large amount of the people, as you started to get to know them, as you heard their shares, as you became active in their life, you would start to hear big traumas that came up, like you were saying, sexual abuse, maybe physical trauma, they're hit, so something happened to them, right? And how it really kind of fueled their addiction. And these seemed very tied in together, that it was a coping mechanism in order to deal with not being able to process what had happened to them. Is that how some addictions start? I mean, I know the science on this is kind of all over the place, but it seems to me that, there is a huge push right now in the therapy community to say there's a big tie-in between having addictions or developing addictions and having trauma, especially early on in your life.
as we were talking before the show, one thing that great advice I received from my first clinical director is there's not one route out of the city. And I think sometimes it can be, low-hanging fruit to point towards one thing. And it's not always a one-size-fits all. Oftentimes, it's typically multiple things. EMDR, which is what I specialize in, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, suggests that there's a core negative value that occurs very young, even positive in utero, that can happen, where maybe I feel like I'm unwanted, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough. And being we don't have the neurological capabilities, to challenge such at such an early age, it gets reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And it may be, a fight with a parent where maybe the parent didn't offer, affirmation, what have you. Obviously, when we're talking about those big T-like traumas, as the field kind of states, those can be very, very profound. Right, we're talking about sexual abuse. We're talking about maybe neglect, especially if that's in childhood, where my needs weren't taken care of, and I'm not able to take care of those needs. And then if we don't have a way to make sense of that or to process and navigate through it, maybe even with a therapist, maybe it's something that there's cultural stipulation or stigma, right? Or maybe I don't have the access to it, right? We might develop our own ways to make sense of it, right? And you talk about the use of a defense mechanism. That defense mechanism could be, projection. We might project that out, right? All of these are more internalized. It could be that we, suppress it or repress it, right? And act like it doesn't exist. One of the more controlled ways of doing so, and again, by no means am I suggesting that this is healthy and there's a great consequence with it. Again, I call substance use almost controlled dissociation. I don't like how I'm feeling right now. Maybe I experienced a trigger from, it could be something physical, right? It could be mental and emotional. Maybe it's getting yelled at. Maybe it's something physical. It's the area in which I'm in the environment, right? And that triggers a trauma response because trauma is oftentimes held within the body, right? Yes. And our brains don't necessarily know context. They just know that something feels very similar to the thing that kept me unsafe, that was out of my control. And then these trauma responses come up. It's even neurologically, we'll maybe sever thought because if something really dangerous is coming at me, I need to get out of dodge, fight or flight. Right? We've all heard fight or flight response. And if I sit here and think, right, if a tiger's coming at me or a dog's running at me, if I was on my run this morning, I don't have time to think. That dog's going to get to me and it's going to bite me, right? I need to go ahead and act, and sometimes without thought. And so in those times, we can utilize those. It's oftentimes, again, referred to as, we're going to say something.
No, I was going to say it makes sense that so many people that have had trauma, when you're talking about fight or flight, these are not great feelings. I think everybody's had that, right? Everybody's had fight or flight to a certain degree. And it might have been real. It might, like I always say, unless a pack of wild dogs are chasing you, maybe you don't need to do anything right now. But sometimes a pack of wild dogs are chasing you, and this feeling is not good. So of course it seems that substances, and I would say really anything that is addictive, it could be food, it could be sex, it could be gambling, it could be, of course, the traditional drugs and alcohol, allow you to kind of suspend that feeling for a period of time. And I would even say of somebody who kind of falls into this category, Sean, I would even say works very well for a long time.
Yeah. I appreciate that viewpoint.
Until it doesn't.
Oftentimes we say in the therapy room, it is when it is until it isn't, or it's helpful when it's helpful and it's not when it's not. And so that's one of the first things that we talk about when someone comes in, especially from a substance use perspective, is what's helpful here? Again, kind of a different way to think about it, but why am I doing it? What's the point of it? There's a reason why. I posit all behavior is purposeful, and that's backed by a lot of great research. We might not know its purpose. Again, it might be a defense mechanisms that we use more autonomically or automatically, subconsciously, right? But there's a reason why it exists, and sometimes that is as freeing to a client, right? To a person that's maybe struggling through substance use or struggling through trauma as well. Obviously, if it's co-occurring, both. is to say, what is its purpose without the stigma, without the pressure, without the bad, shame,
Well,
shame
this
that
is
can be
hard, and I
attached to
think,
it.
what happens with a lot of the people that I see, and they'll come into the group, and there'll be a lot of people listening to this, and they're like, "I have trauma." And a lot of people don't understand, they start to realize they have trauma when they start to get sober. They're really so detached from the
Yeah.
actual what's going on with them, and when they try to get when they try to get sober, they get triggered, and I've noticed that, um addiction so much is an old belief, that believing that it's gonna work for me, getting fooled, it's gonna work for me this time, it's gonna be, but when it's backed by great emotional
Mhm.
pain beyond the idea of that I'm powerless over
Right.
the actual substance, this is where I see it causes a lot of problems because it's hard to unpack.
Yeah.
Is it the trauma? Is it the addiction? Do I have trauma? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like
Absolutely.
unpacking all of that
Mhm.
becomes very confusing for people. What do you do if you're in that? Because I look, Recovered Life, we come across every day. We have people come into the lives that have this particular problem. What the hell do you do if you don't know how to unpack what's going on with you?
Sure. And again, one of the reasons why the substance use exists, the emotional response gets so high. And if I touch this thing, that my body, right, my system is built without a lot of control. This is subconsciously we're talking about, right? If you look at, right, neuroception, right, which is the unconscious autonomic response to scan our environment for safety and security, right? When that gets so intense, right, the substance use oftentimes can quiet that, right? And then when we remove the substances and that safety net, right, oftentimes we'll use the phrasing, when it's quiet, it gets loud, right? And so that's where, right, can we have a support group? Can we go and talk to a therapist to come in? And one of the first things that we do, especially with EMDR, complex traumas, maybe where there's multiple levels of trauma, intense and impactful response, we'll do the coping strategies. We call it extended resourcing and resourcing strategies, right? That really works in regulation, right? Can I find what works for me that makes that response not so intense? That gives us maybe some time to think, to say, okay, maybe right now, this response is going off. Thank you, brain, for keeping me safe. Oftentimes we'll say, this is my brain on trauma, even as a offshoot of this is our brain on drugs. This is our brain on trauma, and it's a response that's trying to keep me safe, but maybe it's not the same context, right? Maybe it's not the thing that happened to me, right? Whether it was past relationship, neglect, abuse, what have you, and that this is just my brain trying to keep me safe, as an example, right? Other strategies would be, what safe space, what is keeping me safe here, right? How can I be where I'm at to keep myself safe? And if we can chip away at that, to allow ourselves to regulate, to allow that emotional response not to be so intense, to whereas, as we hear a lot of the kids be saying, out of pocket, right? Because we'll go left before we even think. And sometimes left may not be as helpful, can be more consequential.
I hear you say safe. So really, if we're really gonna boil this down to something very simple,
Yeah.
all of trauma is not feeling safe and okay.
Yeah.
Not feeling safe. And we talked about in a previous episode about maybe that's why there's some of this pushback with people who have addiction and don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't go to a group. They feel compelled not to go that way, even though they see other people connecting, because it seems to me that just like addiction, connection and communication reduces the illusion that you are safe in the here and now, right? There is nothing wrong with the here and now. And addiction is always this voice that says you're not okay in the here and now, right? So it's like, how do you do that? How do you start to step back? You were talking a little bit about unpacking, about telling yourself, I'm okay, when internally, and you see this all the time. And I'm going to tell you, this has happened to me. I didn't trust people. On the outside, I look like I did. I played a good game with it, but really deep down inside, there was like a very big, it's like, you're only going to get so far with me, you know?
Yes.
And beyond this,
Mhm.
I'm not doing that, Sean. I'm like, I don't trust you to do that.
Yeah. Great point. Great point, right? Putting the walls up and as you alluded to, right? Almost like selective vulnerability. We know that vulnerability is the one indicator of depth in our relationships, but I think we all desire, right? At the end of the day, yeah, especially when there's trauma, as you alluded to, absolutely, right? Safety and security. And then how do I create depth in my connection when there's this subconscious response that says, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. As you alluded to, sometimes feeling lonely, right? As lonely as we've ever been, even amongst people, right? I have this intense desire to want to connect. Yeah, everything inside of me is telling myself to not do it. And there's a lot of different resources. One that I think that the addiction recovery community does fantastically, right? Jumping on, right? There's 24/7 support groups available online as well that maybe allows us to dip our toe in that pool to just be engrossed by maybe others that have similar experiences, and sometimes that can offer us the support that we need. Sometimes it can be as difficult as, do I need this to continue to be challenging, right? In a way, in through the depth of the hurt, through the depth of the disconnect, right? That can be motivating as well. We won't jump in a pool that is really, really unsafe until our system kind of tells us, okay, now's the time. And that's okay too. Come as you are to these sorts of resources and situations.
So, we talked a lot about, we talked a lot about what is trauma. We talked a lot about the feelings with it, the stumbling blocks. I want to get in after this quick break. I want to get into this feeling of dread that a lot of people have in recovery, that suffer from trauma, that they've come so far. Because, I know for me and for many people that I talk to, it was maybe a good 5 or 10 years between when I figured out, oh, something else is going on here.
Yep.
And this maybe doesn't have anything to do with what I thought it had to do with. These patterns that are coming. So when we come back, we're going to talk about, if you have dread, you're going to want to hold tight, because after this very quick break, we're going to be back, and Sean and I are going to dive into this.
Recovery isn't just a journey, it's a lifestyle. And now, you can wear your recovery with pride. The Recovered Life Shop is live, packed with merch designed just for people in recovery. Whether it's a hoodie to keep you warm, a mug to start your day right, or a statement tee that lets the world know you're living your best recovered life. Need a little humor in your recovery? Grab the Resentment Some Assembly Required t-shirt. It's a classic. Ready to take massive action? Start your day with the Massive Action coffee mug. Or keep it simple and spiritual with the Chopwood Fetch Water Trucker hat. Every piece is designed to inspire, start conversations, and keep you connected to your recovery journey. And the best part? Every purchase supports great content like this and spreads the recovery message. So, go to recoveredlife.tv and click on the Shop tab now.
And welcome back. I have got my buddy on here, Sean Osterdorf, therapist. We're talking about trauma, which he specializes in. Before the break, Sean, I asked a very big, hairy question. This all sounds good, but if you're sitting there on a Sunday night and you have massive feelings of dread and despair, where you feel like you've done the work and maybe you're sober and you've done the thing, but you still feel crappy, dread, what do you do if you find yourself in recovery like this?
This is something that I'm also, very familiar with. You alluding to the, even like the coping of gambling, spending, sex. For me, it transitioned, as many do in my recovery, to working out. And I worked out so much that, I had injuries to both shoulders and couldn't work out anymore. So now what do? I transitioned it from, maybe away from substance use to health and my health journey. Yet that also has limits too, and that's all I'm utilizing. And so kind of sitting back there and saying, man, I've had some time and some sober time, and I've been able to maybe have some of the worldly successes. And yet you notice that there's something still there, right? There's still something that's maybe not complete. And maybe I'm having the successes and they're not feeling fulfilling. I'm just checking boxes. And that's where I really want to encourage you in those spaces to reach out, whether that's to loved ones, whether that's to resources such as this, where you can have the conversations, touching base with a therapist. Of course, I'm going to be prone and find that very, very helpful.
I think therapy is
24 hours
amazing.
that you can find online. There's a lot of different things that you can do in those spaces. Can that be a sign of, hey, there's something here that can be helpful, right? And can this be a time that says, hey, there's just another step here that maybe I can take, and allow that to be an increase in awareness as opposed to maybe something that's dreadful, right? Or despair, to say, man, I've done all this great work and it's not feeling the way I was feeling. Maybe it's not meeting my expectations in the ways that I felt like it was going to meet.
I'm a big proponent of therapy and also coaching, which we do, and spiritual work. And, the reason I asked about the dread is I can't tell you, I can put a post literally to the community, Sean, at 4 or 5 o'clock Pacific time. Anybody feeling dread right now? I'll get people are like, I am, right? And when you go back and you start talking, we have this conversation.
Sure.
Many of the people who will comment are very successful on the outside world. Like, they've achieved things, they've done things, they've stayed sober, they've done the work. But I like what you're talking about. There's this one thing, there's still this block here. And I'm very metaphysical, so I talk about it in energy terms. And I want to get into EDMR and how that helps and in different types of therapy here. But what I find is it's an energetic pattern, and this trauma will shift. It'll go to relationships, and it will go to money. It's like it moves, like you were just saying. Okay, well, now I'm going to work out. Then that stops. It's like peeling an onion back until there's nothing left, right? And I see a lot of people that will be very successful. They'll get 10 years, maybe even 20 years. I know people who've had 30 years, 40 years, and then they will literally go out because they never really could figure out or address this dread that was inside them, this block that they could never really get past to be happy. They have everything, including sobriety, but they're still not free.
Yeah, that's a very great point. And again, what is it that's inside of us that we're looking for? What offers us purpose? Kind of more of that, you're bringing up, metaphysical and energy, more spirituality, which I really, really respect and appreciate as one of the aspects of holistic health. We all have a spirituality. What is it? And can that in those times be especially something that we can lean on, right? It doesn't have necessarily be a religion, it's something greater than ourselves, something that offers faith, something that offers hope, interconnectedness, right? And what is it truly that's offering us meaning and purpose? I found with myself and early in recovery is, okay, I'm just checking boxes. I'm supposed to do this, right? And if I do this, and if I do it enough, then I'll come to happiness and I'll come to freedom. And, for me, it was more of that American dream, so to speak, the family and the career and all of such. Got there. And, I remember someone looking over to me and saying, you just had this great accomplishment and feat, and think about where you came from and where you're at now. And I wasn't happy. I was maybe as empty as I've ever been. Again, no substance use, right? And friends and community. In that time since, right, it's been what brings me purpose, or what gives me purpose, what offers me meaning, and to truly reinforce what it is that gives me joy in this world.
One of the things I've found is that sometimes you can't even lie to yourself. Like, you're maybe acting out or doing something, and you know that it has really nothing to do with the person, place, or thing that
Yep.
you're acting out on, and then you realize it's like, "Oh, something's going on here."
Yeah.
Is this a good stepping off point?
It, well, one, just to have the awareness of such, right, it is a step in the right direction. It's almost like a backhanded compliment from our brain to say, "Hey, this is a step forward and in a really nice direction." Also humbling to say, "Hey, this lies within me," right, and maybe not, as you said, with the person, place, or thing, right, and so there is growth within that. And I love how you phrase something we often talk about. Is we cannot be disingenuous to ourselves. We can, right? But typically that's going to come to a crossroads at some point to say, okay, this has happened enough, right? Who's the common denominator or what's the common denominator? Sometimes it can be an environment, especially when we're talking about trauma. Sometimes that's going to come back and say, oh, okay, well, I'm the common denominator. I might have to do something to shift here. Right. And so can we find common ground in that? What do I believe? Right. Can it be more strength based? Can it be more kind of positive in nature? Something that's more encouraging and supportive, right? As you alluded to, the lying to ourselves, right, or being disingenuous with self. Typically, we're even subconsciously going to know that we don't believe such.
It's so interesting. I wanna jump in here to how do you heal this? Because, I'm on a little bit of a campaign here. I would
Yeah,
almost call it I would hate to use the war analogy, but I
sure.
am on TikTok, where I have a lot of people that will come up, that will go to our room, they'll go to our community, and they'll identify as broken. And I'm
Mm,
like, "No one is broken. Okay, you have broken thinking, you might have broken actions, but you yourself, if you're in this room, it's a pretty good indication you're not broken."
right.
And so the first thing you need to do is stop this bullshit that you're broken. Stop this inner dialogue, because this inner dialogue is creating the excuse that you really can't deal with your addiction or trauma or mental health issue because, quote, you're broken. And the fact
Yeah,
that you have the awareness that something's going on with you proves to me fully you're not broken. It's like a lawnmower. If it starts and you're there and you're on the lawn, it might not be cutting it the way you want, but
sure.
it's not broken. It's working.
Yeah, yep. Love that idea of reframing, right? Even if that's what it maybe feels as if, right? Then can I reframe that in a way that is much more encouraging and supportive? Because as you're alluding to, what kind of impact can that have on the psyche, right? Or our ego formation, which is our identity, if I'm sharing that with myself incessantly, right? On repeat that, well, I'm just broken. And then how can I impact my choices or how I feel towards myself. Um, I love the fact, right? I always say that in the therapy room, you're here, you're here. The amount of times that you could have gone left to say, nope, this came up and this came up and this came up. The fact that you're here and you prioritize that. Same with tuning into the podcast. We do what we want in this world, for the most part, right? To some degree. And the fact that you're here listening to this, listening to Damon, right, share the encouragement and the support and to help you get through the hour and the day to keep on trucking forward and finding a healthy and happy life.
So let's
Right.
talk
It's
about
a huge step.
solution. I love this, Sean, and thank you, because I think, this just validates the fact that, like, you can do this. Like, you can
Mhm.
recover from not only addiction, but you can be in recovery from trauma as well. It might not be perfect. Not
Yeah.
everything is going to work maybe the way you want, and maybe it shouldn't work the way you want, right? Like, that's what we learn
Sure.
also too.
Sure.
Maybe it shouldn't. I shouldn't get what I. Maybe I should get. Maybe there's something better for me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the solution here, because
Mhm.
EMDR is talked about. Why is EMDR so good for this?
Yeah.
And why is this the go-to to really get the result for people that they might want?
Sure. Just to add from your last, I love the phrasing perfectly imperfect. As a phrasing we oftentimes use in the therapy room. It might not be in the time we want it or in the way that we want it. We might not know what we even need if we need to continue with that step forward, right? I might not know what tomorrow has to bring, but I know what I can do right now, and I know what I can do today. right? And if I do it today, then I can do it tomorrow. And if I can repeat that kind of cycle, does that help break, kind of break those kind of older cycles and older routines? Yeah, EMDR is just a wonderful modality to utilize when it comes from the trauma perspective. I'd have to be honest and humble here and tell you, when I first heard it, I felt it was a little hoity-toity because we use eye movements, right? And so what that does is, by utilizing those eye movements, it activates both sides of our brains. We call it bilateral stimulation, which increases our ability to activate some of those memories in which maybe we might have some memory, maybe we don't have much memory at all, right? It can activate the memory to allow that to be a little bit more clear. Also in a way in which it is a little bit less invasive. Old school talk processing, talk therapy processing, there we go, is something that can be have a lot more intense emotional response, right, as we're talking through it, maybe activating the memory in that way. We don't have to activate every single memory as we once did in the past, right, where we're gonna really kind of sit in this traumatic experience, and we're gonna really talk through it and all the things that came up, and we're gonna try to as we know about memory consolidation, right, allow that maybe more resilient, more supportive and encouraging understanding of that. But man, I was tough. I was resilient. Man, I'm strong and courageous. And for the things that I went through, and to be able to continue to move forward, and we kind of can see that in a different light with the help of therapy. And sometimes we did not with the help of therapy. Maybe we can do that with a loved one or a supportive person. That we can kind of identify those more supportive framework, and then we can replant that in the moment, and that's what we allow for memory consolidation. EMDR is really just a much more effective and efficient process that targets a neurological network, right, where this core negative value exists. I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. I'm unwanted. And then through that, we can replant the more adaptive belief that says, actually, no, I am enough, regardless of the situation, regardless of what I went through. That can allow us that clarity and kind of freedom to.
It's severing, in some ways, it's severing that emotional cord. It's not that you're ignoring that the trauma did not happen,
Yeah, it's addressing it more head on.
but it seems that you're breaking that cord, so you can choose how you want to react.
Yeah.
When you feel that this is coming up. I love this. I love it. What's your final thought here for people who are, they feel broken. They feel that they've done everything, like you said, and we're going to get a little bit more into this after the show. They've done everything that they needed to do, but they just still feel not okay. They're still triggered. They still have all these things in the past that they have not been able to work out in either a 12-step or recovery group.
Just don't give up. I think that's really the message that I think is that I like to project out there. Right, there is a path to freedom. There is a path to healing and recovery. Right, we might take an L, right, or a loss in a given day. What can I do to turn the page and to keep moving forward? Right, I think we talked about expectations a handful of times today, Damon. I think that's the role of expectations, knowing that this is a battle. Right, I used to coach, and I was an athlete growing up, and know your opponent. Right, really understanding that. This is a tough process, and it is filled, right, with challenges, and maybe we call them failures, but that we can learn from those failures. And as long as we continue to put our best foot forward, that there is a path to freedom from this.
I love this. We're going to put links to how you can get a hold of Sean in the show notes. And then hold on, Sean, here. And for those of you who are Recovered Life Plus subscribers, I'm going to go into Sean's journey a little bit in the after the show. So hold tight, Sean, and we'll go there. Thanks so much for coming on today. So great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, if you like this episode, think about supporting us by becoming a Recovered Life Plus member. At Recovered Life TV, we're not just delivering premium recovery resources, we're empowering you with the knowledge and tools that make a real difference in the quality of your recovery. By subscribing, you gain access to ad-free content, expert insights, exclusive video and audio segments, special projects, plus so much more, all while supporting our mission to spread the recovery message far and wide. Whether you're seeking to deepen your understanding or stay updated on the latest addiction and mental health recovery trends, Recovered Life Plus is for you. Subscribe now and start living your best recovered life. Just go to recoveredlife.tv and become a Plus member today.